Hello, everybody. We are back, a new week, and we're ready to read about Jesus at 12 years old. Wow.
I'm excited because this is going to help me with my rosary.
Yes, and this is our book club we're doing today. It's Be Holy for I Am Holy Book Club. And their visions, we're reading the book of the complete visions of Anne Catherine Emmerich. And those are beautiful visions that she had. And she was beatified in 2004 by Saint Paul,
John Paul
Pope
II.
John Paul II. So his, this was okayed by the Catholic Church, these readings. And so they're very nice because you get a little bit of tidbits in between the actual Bible that we know. So
And let me just say, look, if you're just joining us, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube, look below and you'll see from the beginning, which if you go back to like, what is it, day 34, Jeanette?
I think so. Yeah, the
Day
birth of
34,
Jesus.
the birth of
Oh,
Jesus. Oh my
really
gosh,
good.
it's amazing. So she's a mystic, and she gives a lot of images that you don't even realize that are in our church today, because they pull a lot even from the Passion. Mel Gibson pulled a lot from her visions. So
Yeah.
she's very, very well respected and approved, which means that most of the popes and the people since had written this believe it, and certainly I am now believing it.
Oh, me too.
I didn't at first, though. Jeanette had to convince me, but she did it
No,
because I do.
these writings convinced you, not me.
Well, that's true,
The Holy
but
Spirit.
I wouldn't have done this without
Yeah.
you. So I'm just saying that these writings, you're going to learn so much. It's going to put you in the scene. This isn't just, read and then you go away. We talk about it, and you don't have to listen. First, we read. We're only talking a little bit in case you're new. And then, so, okay, let's get started.
Okay, so here we go. It's the Holy Family at Nazareth, Jesus at the age of 12 in the Temple of Jerusalem. There were three separate rooms in the house at Nazareth, that of the Mother of God being the largest and most pleasant. In it, Jesus, Mary, Joseph, they met to pray. I very seldom saw them together at other times. They stood at prayer, their hands crossed upon their breasts, and they appeared to speak aloud. I often saw them praying by a light. They stood under a lamp that had several wicks, or near a kind of branched candlestick fastened to the wall, and upon which the flame burned. They were most of the time alone in their respective rooms, Joseph working in his. I saw him cutting sticks and lath, planing wood, and carrying up a beam, Jesus helping him. Mary was generally engaged sewing or knitting with little needles, at which she sat on the ground, her feet crossed under her, and a little basket at her side. They slept alone, each in a separate room. The bed consisted of a cover which in the morning was rolled up. I saw Jesus assisting his parents in every possible way, and also on the street and wherever opportunity offered, cheerfully, eagerly, and obligingly helping everyone. He assisted his foster father in his trade, or devoted himself to prayer and contemplation. He was a model for all the children of Nazareth. They loved him and feared to displease him. When they were naughty and committed faults, their parents used to say to them, "What will Joseph's son say when I tell him this? How sorry he will be." Sometimes they gently complained to him before the little ones, saying, "Tell them not to do such or such a thing anymore." And Jesus took it playfully, and like a little child, he would beg the children affectionately to do so, and so would pray with them too. His heavenly Father for strength, hold on, I lost my place, would pray with them to his heavenly Father for strength to become better, and would persuade them to acknowledge their faults and ask pardon on the spot. About an hour's journey from Nazareth toward Sepphoris is a little place called Ophna. There, during the boyhood of Jesus, dwelt the parents of James the Greater and of John. In those early years, they associated with Jesus until their parents removed to Bathsheba, and they themselves went to the fishery. There lived in Nazareth, an Essenian family related to Joachim. They had 4 sons, a few years older or younger than Jesus, named respectively Cleophas, James, Judas, and Japhet. They too were playmates of Jesus, and with their parents were in the habit of making the journey to the temple along with the Holy Family. These 4 brothers became, at the time of Jesus' baptism, disciples of John, and after his murder, disciples of Jesus. When Andrew and Saturnin crossed the Jordan to Jesus, they followed them and spent the whole day with him. They were among those disciples of John whom Jesus took with him to the marriage feast at Cana. Cleophas is the same to whom, in company with Luke, Jesus appeared at Emmaus. He was married and dwelt at Emmaus. His wife afterwards joined the women of the community. 10.
Jesus was tall and slender, with a delicate face and beaming countenance, and though pale, he was healthy looking. His perfectly straight golden hair was parted over his high open forehead and fell upon his shoulders. He wore a long, light brownish gray tunic, which reached to his feet, the sleeves rather wide around the hand. At the age of 8 years, Jesus went for the first time with his parents to Jerusalem for the Pasch, and every succeeding year he did the same. In those first visits, Jesus had already excited attention in Jerusalem among friends with whom he and his parents stayed. Also, among the priests and doctors, they spoke of the pious, intelligent child, of Joseph's extraordinary son, just as amongst us one might at the annual pilgrimages notice in particular this or that modestly holy looking person, this or that clever peasant child, and recognize him again the next year. So Joseph had already some acquaintances in the city when, in his 12th year with his friends and their sons, he accompanied his parents to Jerusalem. His parents were accustomed to walk with the people from their own part of the country, and they knew that Jesus now made the journey for the 5th time. Always went with other youths from Nazareth. But this time, Jesus had, on the return journey, not far from the Mount of Olives, separated from his companions, who all thought that he had joined his parents who were following. Jesus had, however, gone to that side of Jerusalem, nearest to Bethlehem, to the inn at which the Holy Family, before Mary's purification, had put up. Mary and Joseph thought him on ahead with the other Nazarenes, while these latter thought that he was following with his parents. When at last they all met at Golgotha. The anxiety of Mary and Joseph at his absence was very great. They returned at once to Jerusalem, making inquiries after him on the way and everywhere in the city itself. But they could not find him, since he had not been where they usually stayed. Jesus had slept in the inn before the Bethlehem gate, where the people knew him and his parents. There they had joined several youths and gone with them to 2 schools of the city, the first day to one, the second to another. On the morning of the 3rd day, he had gone to a 3rd school at the temple, and in the afternoon into the temple itself, where his parents found him. These schools were all different and not exactly schools of the law. Other branches were taught in them. The last mentioned was the neighborhood of the temple, and from it the Levites and priests were chosen. Jesus, by his questions and answers, so astonished and embarrassed the doctors and rabbis of all these schools that they resolved on the afternoon of the 3rd day, in the public lecture of the temple and in presence of the rabbis most deeply versed in the public lecture hall, most deeply versed in the various sciences, to humble the boy Jesus. The scribes and doctors had concerted the plan together. Although pleased at first, they had in the end become vexed at him. They met in the public lecture hall in the middle of the temple porch, in front of the sanctuary, in the round place where Jesus also taught. There I saw Jesus sitting in a large chair, which he did not by a great deal fill. Around him was a crowd of aged Jews in priestly robes. They were listening attentively and appeared to be perfectly furious. Oh, I feared that they would lay hands upon him. On the top of the chair in which Jesus was sitting were brown heads like those of dogs. They were greenish brown, the upper parts glistening and sparkling with a yellow light. They were similar heads and figures upon several long tables or benches that stood in the temple sideways from this place, covering with offerings. The place was very large and so crowded, and one could scarcely imagine himself in a church. As Jesus had in the schools illustrated, his answers and explanations by all kinds of examples from nature, art, and science. The scribes and doctors had diligently gathered together, masters in all these branches. They now began one by one to dispute with him. His remarks that, although properly speaking, such subjects did not appear appropriate to the temple, yet he would discuss them, since he was at his father's. But they understood not that he referred to his heavenly Father. They imagined that Joseph had commanded him to show off his learning. Oh. Jesus now answered and taught upon medicine. He described the whole human body in a way far beyond the reach of even the most learned. He discoursed with the same faculty upon astronomy, architecture, agriculture, geometry, arithmetic, jurisprudence, and in fine, upon every subject proposed to him. He applied all so skillfully to the law and the promise, to the prophecies, to the temple, to the mysteries of worship and sacrifices, that his hearers, surprised and confounded, passed successively from astonishment and admiration to fury and shame. They were enraged at hearing some things that were never before new, and at hearing others they had never before understood. Wowza. Jesus had been teaching 2 hours when Joseph and Mary entered the temple. They inquired after their child of the Levites, whom they knew, and received for answer that he was with the doctors in the lecture hall. But as they were not at liberty to enter that hall, they sent one of the Levites in to call Jesus. Jesus sent them word that he must first finish what he was then about. Mary was very much troubled at his not obeying at once, for this was the first time he had given his parents to understand that he had other commands than theirs to fulfill. He continued to teach. Yeah, he continued to teach for another hour, and then he left the hall and joined his parents in the porch of Israel, the woman's porch. Leaving his hearers confounded, confused, and enraged, Joseph was well awed and astonished, but he kept humble silence. Mary, however, drawing near to Jesus, said, "Child, why hast thou done this to us? Behold, thy father and I have sought thee sorrowing." But Jesus answered gravely, "Why have thou sought me? Do you not know I must be about my Father's business?" But they did not understand. They at once began with him their journey home. The bystanders gazed at him in astonishment, and I was in dread lest they should lay hands upon the boy. For I saw that some of them were full of rage. I wondered at their allowing the Holy Family to depart so peacefully. Although the crowd was dense, yet a wide path was made to permit the Holy Family to pass. I saw all the details and heard almost the whole of Jesus's teaching, but I cannot remember all. It was made a great impression upon the scribes. Some recorded the affair as a notable event, while here and there it was whispered around, giving rise to all kinds of remarks and false reports. But the true statement the scribes kept to themselves. They spoke of Jesus as a very forward boy, possessed indeed of fine talents, but said those talents required to be cultivated. I saw the Holy Family again leaving the city, outside of which they joined a party of about 3 men, 2 women, and some children. I did not know them, but they appeared to be from Nazareth. They went together to different places around Jerusalem, also to Mount Olivet. They wandered around the beautiful pleasure grounds there found, occasionally standing to pray, their hands crossed on their breasts. I saw them also going over a bridge that spanned a brook. This walking around and praying of the little party reminded me forcibly of a pilgrimage. When Jesus had returned to Nazareth, I saw a feast in Anne's house, at which were gathered all the youths and maidens among their friends and relatives. I know not whether it was a feast of rejoicing at Jesus's having been found, a feast solemnized upon the return of the Paschal journey, or a feast customarily upon the completion of a son's 12th year. Whatever it may have been, Jesus appeared to be the object of it. Beautiful bowers were erected over the table, from which hung garlands of vines, leaves, and ears of corn. The children were served with grapes and little rolls. There were present at this feast 33 boys, all future disciples of Jesus, and I received an instruction upon the years of Jesus's life. During the whole feast, Jesus instructed the other boys and explained to them a very wonderful parable, which, however, was only imperfectly understood. It was of a marriage feast at which water could be turned into wine and the lukewarm guests into zealous friends, and again a marriage feast where the wine could be changed into blood and the bread into flesh, which blood and flesh would abide with guests until the end of the world as strength and consolation, as a living bond of union. He said also to one of his youths, a relative of his own named Nathanael, I shall be present at thy marriage. Wow. From his 12th year, Jesus was always like a teacher. Among his companions. He often sat among them, instructing them, or walked about the country with them. Wow. So the next one is Death of St. Joseph, Jesus, and Mary at Capharnaum.
What he actually said.
They might have written something. Maybe the rabbis have something written that will be found in the future.
Gosh, I would love to find what exactly he said. Jesus
I know,
said.
right? It's like the
Of the human body, everything. I mean, that was God speaking. I mean, of his creation, the human body, you know.
And they were
Wow.
amazed.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like the proclamation. And then he told Nathaniel he was going to be at his wedding. And that's probably the wedding at Cana.
Yeah.
Was probably that Nathaniel.
Because he saw what was coming up. He saw, it was God. Jesus was God there. And he was the 3-in-1. He was always
first,
3-in-1.
Let's go back to the beginning of the reading. So at first I was getting like a little disappointed thinking, oh no, they're not going to help me much with my rosary on this, but they did. Oh my gosh, they did. So here they were at separate rooms in the house of Nazareth, and the Mother of God being the largest and most pleasant. I love how she uses the Mother of God here. In it, Jesus. So he was in her room, and they stood at prayer, Jeanette. They prayed as a family, and they had their hands crossed upon their breasts like this, Jeanette. I guess, right? Crossed like this, right? So
yeah,
they
I would think like that, or grabbing at their heart,
Oh yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe like that, yeah. Or like that, yeah, you're right. Okay, so and of course they did it by light with a candle. So do you sometimes light a candle when you do your prayers? I forget sometimes.
I used to. I don't do it anymore, but I used to.
I forget, but sometimes I do. So here she explained how there were several wicks, just like those candles with like 3 wicks in them, if you've ever seen them. And then she said some with 3 like brass maybe on the wall, something, or steel, whatever. So most of the time they were alone in their rooms, and Joseph working in his, he would cut sticks and plain wood in his bedroom. Jesus sometimes helping him. So here he was teaching Jesus. So they had his workshop. He was in his room. So Mary was engaged in sewing or knitting with little needles like you're always doing. But she sat on the ground with her feet crossed under her. Could you imagine the Mother of God?
Oh my gosh.
On the floor with her feet crossed and a little basket at her side. So they slept alone in each separate room. So Jesus didn't sleep in the room with his mom, but their bed was just rolled up. It was like just a cover. That was considered a bed back then. Could you imagine? We're so spoiled today, right?
We are.
And so then she sees Jesus assisting his parents in every way. He was 12, so I would imagine. And he was cheerfully and eagerly obliging, helping everyone. He assisted Joseph in his trade. He was the model. All the children loved him. He was the model for the whole town. And everybody would say, what would Jesus do? Don't we do that
Oh
today?
my gosh, yes.
So I just thought that was neat. And then here they go about an hour's journey towards Sepphoris to a place called Ophna. There, during the boyhood of Jesus, when he was a kid, were the parents of James the Greater and of John. So here, his disciples, their parents, they all knew each other. This was not a random, like he knew their character. Because I always used to think when he picked his disciples, what did he do? He just ran around and grabbed up, random people. No, he knew these people from childhood.
And also, these people could be part of why when the Bible got translated, they were considered their brothers, but they weren't because they were very close to him from growing up. They were brethren. So the word brethren is considered to us in English brother, but in that language, it included
Exactly.
all the cousins, the family included.
Because they're all related sometimes,
Yes.
because they're all the Assyrians of, like, Anne is the Assyrian. So it seems like,
So,
they were Jews and
but that is
Assyrians,
so cool because they were all
right?
together for like they grew up together. They grew up holding
Yeah,
with each other. That's so cool.
I know. And it's amazing that they respected him because the old saying, you can't be a hero in your own hometown. So, a lot of times people that you grew up with are like, oh, that's just the carpenter's son. But these guys knew and respected him because they knew him since he was a child.
Yeah.
So in those early years, they associated with Jesus until their parents removed to Bethsaida and they themselves went to the fishery. So that's when, like when kids go off to college or whatever, some of them go to become this and some go to become that. So they separated soon after this. Some, like Peter went to become a fisherman. They don't say anything about Peter here, but some of them went off to become
No,
fishermen.
he meets Peter later. He didn't know Peter.
Right.
He meets
Okay.
him later, remember?
Oh, okay. So he
Yeah,
didn't know Peter.
he sees them fishing and he calls them and yeah,
But some of the other guys that he grew up with went to become fishermen, and some
yes,
went to do other things, become
yeah.
taxpayers or whatever. So there lived in Nazareth an Assyrian family related to Joachim. They had 4 sons, a few years older or younger than
And
Jesus.
guys, in case you don't know who Joachim is, that's Jesus's grandfather, Mary's father.
Mm-hmm.
Mary's mother was Anne, the dad was Joachim.
Then they had 4 sons, a few years older or younger than Jesus, respectively named Cleopas, James, Judas, and Japhet. So, I wonder if this is the James. We've heard these names in the Bible.
Oh
Judas,
yes.
Judas, not Judas the Iscariot,
Iscariot,
but
yeah.
Judas, the other Judas later on, the other one that they talk about. So they too were playmate. That St. Jude, the for desperate causes,
The
because
flame on the head, yeah.
a lot of people don't like him because they say, oh, it's the same name as Judas Iscariot, but he was a good one. But anyway, so this might have been him, St. Jude. They too were playmates of Jesus and with their parents were in that, but they were actually cousins, kind of cousins, second cousins too.
Brethrens, yeah.
Brethren, yeah. They were in the habit of making the journey to the temple long. So all this family, they would journey together to go to the temple with the Holy Family. So, you know, while they're going to church every week, you know, they're all walking together. Like, it's so exciting. So these four brothers of making the journey to the temple, along with these four brothers, became at the time of Jesus' baptism disciples of John. There you go. And after his murder, the disciples became the disciples of Jesus. So see, disciples of John the Baptist is who they're talking about. And after his murder, they became disciples of Jesus. So when Andrew and Saturnian crossed the Jordan, they followed them, spent the whole day with him. So they were among the disciples of John. Jesus took with him the marriage to whom Jesus took with him to the marriage feast. So they all came to the marriage feast at Cana, all those brothers. So now when I am doing the rosary and I am on the luminous mysteries, which has the wedding of Cana, the wedding in Cana, I can remember this, the brothers that were once disciples of John. Go ahead.
Every time I picture the wedding of Cana now, I will picture this, and what I always picture since the movie The Chosen, since the
What's that?
Chosen, well, because when he's in Cana, you see Jesus in The Chosen, which is a series, guys. If you've never seen it, you have to.
Remember, it's Protestant, so always watch the Catholic commentary after
Yes.
each episode. Each episode, there's a Catholic commentary. Go ahead.
The wedding at Cana, you see Jesus laughing with everybody, telling jokes, and dancing in a circle with all his male friends and brothers.
That's them.
These guys. So I'm going to picture now a face with names, which is really cool.
I love it. Oh, yeah. Just always watch after The Chosen, the Catholic commentary. I'll put it below. It's on Formed, but it's also on YouTube. Okay, so these are the people, and now we can imagine this when we do our see, since I started doing my rosary on holy ground, as you call it, at the church, since you said that to me, I've had to use my imagination more because I don't have a video and I don't have the book and I don't have a picture. So I actually think it's been really enriching for me. So I'm so glad that you said that. Anyway, so here we are. He was married and dwelt at Emmaus. His wife afterward joined the women of the community. Wait, so in whom they took company with Luke. So Cleopas
lived in Emmaus. So maybe that's the house they went to for dinner that night. So it's Cleopas's house. So this is cool because when I read that story now, I'm going to remember whose house it was that he lived there.
Yeah, and they checked all of this historically. The church went through every detail here, every word of this book they went through. So Cleopas is the saint in whom took company with Luke that wrote the book of Luke. Oh my gosh. He wrote the gospel. Oh my gosh. Jesus appeared at Emmaus. He was married and dwelled at Emmaus. His wife afterward joined the community, the women of the community. So Jesus was tall and slender. See, I always thought of him as a little short because Jewish men are short. And he had a delicate face. And see, we know the face of Turin. We know. Now, when was Turin? I wonder if she knew about the thing of Turin.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. So anyway, because whenever I'm doing the rosary and I do the resurrection, when I am on the glorious, which I did yesterday on Sunday, I imagine by the way, be quiet in church. Some people come early to do the rosary and people are blabbing. It is terrible. You really need to and he did his whole homily about being on sacred ground, and everyone's in there talking like Jesus isn't even there. They're like ignoring that he's there. Anyway, so I was imagining the part when the light, the shroud of Turin, they say it had to be like a nuclear explosion came through that fabric. They said the light, that the scientists said it had to have been like a nuclear explosion under that fabric without destroying it. They knew they were leaving this for scientists later. God knew what he was doing. Everything he has done is deliberate. It's not by
Yes,
accident.
look at, he knew about the wedding in Cana. He knew about the turning the water to wine. He knew all this
Yes, it's
before it even
so
happened.
amazing.
He,
So
yeah,
amazing.
so
So anyway, so I
pretty
imagine
cool.
that when I'm doing the rosary, this is so good for when you do the rosary. Anyway, so um let's see. He wore the tunic. I could just see him. And then it goes back. She goes back a little in time to age 8, and says that's when he began to go with his parents to Jerusalem for Pasch and every succeeding year. So that was some feast that they did. Do you know the Feast of Pasch? I'll have to look that up.
Yes, we need to look that up because there's so many. There's like a bunch of different feasts
Okay, I'll put it below.
very close together, and I can't differentiate one from the other.
Okay, I'll look. Well, I'll put it below when we find it. In those first visits, Jesus had already excited attention in Jerusalem among friends. So they're starting to see how pious and intelligent Joseph's extraordinary son. They don't realize, they don't know he's the son of God yet. So they
And
see him.
they think that Joseph made him go to show off what he
I
learned.
know,
I'm like, what the heck?
I know, because
Joseph
they
being
don't
so
know.
quiet.
Well,
How could
they
they
don't.
think that? Because if they knew Joseph, he was so quiet and humble, right?
But sometimes people see quiet people as devious. So you know, they could be either or. Trust me, I know I had a devious quiet one. Um, so here he was going on annual pilgrimages and very modest and holy looking, and a clever a clever peasant child, and they recognize him again the next year. So they're starting to like target him a little bit if you think about it. So Jesus already had some acquaintances by his 12th year with their friends and sons because he had been gone there 5 years. So he accompanied his parents, and his parents were walking with certain people, um and they knew him. So it seems those are the kids he went off with for those 3 days, and he went to different schools, and we never knew that. So here they talk about they went nearest Bethlehem at the inn in which the Holy Family before Mary's purification had put up. So once again, we're back in a place we already know about. So it's so amazing. So
Yeah.
Mary and Joseph are realizing, they thought, oh, he's ahead with the Nazarenes, with this other people that they met there, that these 5 years he's become accustomed to. So they thought, oh, he's following. And then all of a sudden, when they all met at Gophna, they freak out and they're like, oh my gosh, he's absent. So they run back at once to Jerusalem, asking everyone, where the heck is he? And they can't find him. And
Well,
they
because
go,
they traveled together. They traveled in like
well,
caravans full of like
well,
bunch of people and stuff.
yeah, well, they go back to all the places that they usually stayed at, and Jesus had slept in. But they couldn't find him. And they kept asking people. Well, here, little did they know, he had joined several kids, and they went to different schools, and he spoke at these schools. And then they go to the third, I don't know if he spoke at them, but on the third one at the temple in the afternoon, where his parents did eventually find him, these schools were all different. They were not exactly schools of the law, and the other branches were taught in them. So not just Judaism. The last mention in the neighborhood of the temple where the Levites and the priests were chosen. So that's where the parents found him, where the priests and the Levites. These are like the chosen people to be priests. They were like the smart ones, the ones that God chose to be, you know, priests. But he didn't know, or well, he probably did know, and he knew he was going to send himself, his son, down to put them in their place. So Jesus, by his answers, astonished and embarrassed these doctors and these rabbis. It's because he's telling them things they don't know. He's not meaning to embarrass them, but he has to tell the truth. Sometimes people don't like when they hear the truth. Like Jeanette gets mad at me. It's something I know. She gets really mad at me. Sometimes though I'm wrong, you know, and she's right. So I'm not saying I'm always right over here. But anyway, but she gets mad at me when I do know something and she's like, nah, rah, rah, rah. She gets a little pissed. But then she gets over it. She's like, oh, okay, I see that.
I get over things very quickly, guys.
She
just
does,
so
she
you know.
does. She does. But she still has a hard time admitting sometimes. I have to keep telling her, oh darn it. Hold on, I gotta make this small again. Hold on. So where are we? And then so here they decide to get together, these guys. They concerted a plan. Isn't this this is a reminiscent of the time they planned to kill him? Well, they plan to get together for their egos and tell him how he's wrong. So they try to humble the boy Jesus. Well, they don't need to humble him, but they think they do. So, you know, I sometimes see adults do this with children that are like, my son was extremely smart, and he he would sometimes be smarter than people wanted him to be, and they would try to humble him, and it always bothered me. But anyway, like in his schools, I would say, you know, well, just stand up for yourself or whatever, because he had a real high IQ, 127. He said since he had the accident it's changed, but I don't know. Anyway, so the scribes and doctors, they got together and they meet him there, and around him was this crowd that were perfectly furious, which this is why I love this, because I always see it as they were so impressed with him and la-di-da. No, 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 no. Human nature should have told me no, because I never imagined that they were furious. I thought they were just amazed, because that's what's said when we did our spiritual warfare rosary. They would say, and they were all amazed. So I had this real, you know, la-di-da thing.
You know, some were amazed and others were really furious because, you know, there was a lot of jealousy in those days. And, you know,
no, it says they were all perfectly furious. So they got together. So I don't think many were amazed until the end when he finally went through. That's why he ended up going through each of the explanations. So it talks, I don't know what they were talking about here, Jeanette. What were they talking about? So she was afraid they would hit him. I didn't think that, but you know, on the top of the chair, what were they talking about here, Jeanette? On the top of the chair in brown and upper parts glistening and sparkling with a yellow light. What on earth are they talking about? On the top of the chair in brown and upper parts, wait, Jesus was sitting were brown heads like those of dogs. They were greenish heads and figures upon several long tables. It was some kind of print, maybe.
could be, I don't know.
Some kind of embroidery, maybe. Maybe it was an embroidery of a scene or something.
Yeah, I think so.
That's what it's. See, whenever she starts describing things, it gets me lost. I don't know why, so I kind of ignore it and go back later. Anyway, so you're seeing that there were similar sideways in this place covered with offerings. The place was large and crowded. So I never imagined it was crowded. I thought of it as the picture that we see, the small with just a couple of men around him. No, this was huge and they were all after him. So Jesus had in the schools illustrated his answers and explanation by all kinds of examples from nature, art, and science. The scribes and the doctors had diligently gathered together masters in all these branches. They're like, okay, you're an expert in this, so you come in with this, you're an expert. So now they began one by one to dispute with him. And he remarked that although properly speaking, such subjects did not appear appropriate in the temple, yet he would discuss them, since this was his Father's will. So God told him, because this is his Father's will, God told him to set them straight. Okay, so now we're going to go to the next page. But they understood not that he was referred to as Heavenly Father. They imagined that Joseph had commanded him to show off his learning. Like you said, like, what? Come on. They should have known Joseph better than that. So Jesus now answered and taught upon medicine, and Jeanette is dying to hear that. He described the whole human body.
Human body, which was his creation. So
Right?
he knew what he was talking about. Oh my goodness, I can't even imagine him explaining the eyeball,
Right?
that even one eyeball doesn't match your other eyeball. I mean, this is amazing. Oh my goodness.
Far beyond the reach of even the most
Oh,
learned.
yeah.
So they're like,
Isaiah
what?
55:8-9. Isaiah 55:8-9, this one.
They're like, what? That is not even, what are you talking about, Jesus? They're like, he discoursed with the same faculty of facility among astronomy, architecture, agriculture, geometry, arithmetic, jurisprudence, and in fine, above every subject proposed to him. So he had answers for everything, and they were testing him. They were testing him, Jeanette. He applied all so skillfully to the law and promise, to the prophecies, to the temple, to the mysteries of worship and the sacrifice, that his hearers, surprised and confounded, passed successively from astonishment and admiration to fury and shame. So they were in astonishment and admiration at first, and then they got pissed because their egos were stirred up. They were enraged at hearing some things that they never knew before.
I didn't see him. I haven't heard from any mystic yet or anything of him actually going to a school. Yeah. He was like his father, Joseph, taught him, and he kind of like, I guess he was kind of like homeschooled, and I don't think he needed really to be schooled. Maybe the angels, like John, maybe the messengers would come talk to him.
No, I think he innately knew.
He just knew because he was God, but then he didn't draw on his divinity much.
God maybe had his guardian angel teaching him, right?
Yeah, guardian angel. I know that when he was human, he didn't draw on his divinity, because he could have drawn on his divinity, grabbed onto it when he was suffering so awfully, but he didn't do that. He just
But Jeanette, we've been learning the Opus Angelorum about our guardian angels, and they teach us, and we don't even realize it. We think, like, people say, oh, we go directly to God. That's why those Protestant churches say, no, there's no angels, because they say, no, but guardian angels are messengers. They help us individually, and then they take to God what is important. Now, we can.
They are everywhere in the Bible. They're everywhere in the Bible.
They're everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yes. So here was Jesus' guardian angel, I think, was schooling him. That's what I think. So anyway, so here they become enraged at things they never knew. And he could have only at 12 years old known these by an infusion. He drew upon he was just highly intelligent. Jews were the chosen. Jews were the chosen people, because like half of the prize, what is it? I always want to say the Pulitzer Prize, the prize, like the Nobel Prize. half of it are Jewish people that won. The Jews are very highly intelligent. And I'm happy to say I have a daughter that's half Ashkenazi Jew, and I always try to tell her, "You come from Jesus's line, don't," because she's always like, "Oh, this work is so hard," and then she gets like an A or 100, and she's so surprised. And I said, "Well, Elizabeth, you're of the Ashkenazis." I'm always having to convince her, because there's her boyfriend is from the Shepherd Jews. He's like 33% Jewish. We had his DNA done. And Elizabeth's 50% because her father is 100% Jew. Her Elizabeth's father, my daughter. Anyway, so anyway, so here, let's see. They inquired after, so they're all pissed because of the things they never understood. And here we learn that it was 2 hours he had been teaching all this. So now we're getting, this is a 3-hour affair. 1 hour while Jesus' parents are waiting for him. 2 hours where before they come to find him, they're looking at all the other places that they told them that the kids were at. So it must have been the kids were waiting. So they finally inquire, and their child is with the Levites. Of course, they know the Levites are the priests, and they're probably like, what? And they receive an answer that he's with the doctors in the lecture hall. Jeanette, this is a lecture hall, a part of the school. So here, they were not at liberty to enter. People weren't allowed to enter there, but here Jesus was in there. They brought him in there to debate him, right? And this is like a debate when you think about it. So here, he had Mary is upset because they sent someone in, and he's like, wait a minute, I have to be about my father's business. So what is he doing? I never understood that statement he made, Jeanette. I had to be about my father's business. It's like, what is he talking about? God told him to debate with these guys. And Mary and Joseph are confounded. They're like, why aren't you obeying? Come out here immediately. You know how when you tell your kids, when they're little, you're like, you come here immediately. No excuses. They're like, what? Remember in our rosary, it said, and then he was subject to them. So this acts like they just go on happily. No, Mary and Joseph are like, what are you doing? And then he explains to them, I was, and they still didn't understand though. So he finally comes out after the hour after, while they're sitting there steaming, Mary and Joseph. But I don't think they had they weren't enraged like that. But Joseph was humbly silent, and Mary was like, child, why hast thou done this to us? So she's a little bit perturbed here. And I never imagined that. I thought she was just worried and upset. But here she's like, that's why I never understood why she said that fully to him, why he disappeared. I thought she meant. But here she's saying, why were you leaving us sitting out here for an hour? Jeanette, can you imagine how much we are getting for our rosary here?
Yes.
This is explaining so much to us.
Very good.
I can't wait to tell this to Father John, because he's like, I don't know how this can help, understand the Bible. It helps me a lot. So anyway, do you not know that I must be about my father's business? And then they're like, but they didn't understand. They still didn't understand. It's like when God talks to you, he doesn't talk to us in words, and he doesn't say, do this, do that. We just do things knowing this was an inspiration from God. At least that's what happens to me.
Well, see, it's like Mary knew from the day that the angel Gabriel came to her and announced, and she was like, what?
Well,
I do not know man. How is it? She knew he was the Son of God. She knew who he was.
She wasn't confused.
But
she said, wait a minute, how can that be? I don't know man.
Yes.
And then he imparted the knowledge to her.
Exactly.
It was then he did.
Every now and then you can just imagine the love of a mother, even though he is the Son of God, that's still her baby, you know?
Yes.
So going back and forth, so that's why Jesus was telling her, and that's why sometimes he calls her woman, because he kind of puts her back to who he really is, waking her up
Right.
again to who he really is.
Right.
Because
Maybe that's
she
why.
is confused because she is a mother
Right.
all the time. But when he wakes her up,
Oh my
woman,
gosh, you're right.
up, I'm here doing my father's business at 12 years old, it's because that's who he is. He's God. But
Oh
at the
my
same
gosh,
time,
Jeanette, I never
he's
thought of
her
that.
mother, he's her son. And
You're
that's
right.
Mary ponders a lot. That's why she ponders, because she's constantly pondering what her son really is, you know? So yeah, I'm getting chills just because
Right.
it's amazing.
You are so right. I never thought of that.
Yeah.
Ah, so here at first they are upset with him. They and then he tells them, and now she can't remember this whole thing, like she heard it all, but and he made this great impression. And some recorded the affair. Maybe we will see that. Maybe they'll be discovered someday in the Jewish things. Maybe someday they'll find that, and they'll say this was
Oh, that would be amazing.
imagine. So, um, but the true statement the scribes kept to themselves. They spoke of Jesus as a very forward boy and possessed indeed of the fine talents, but those talents required to be cultivated. He didn't need to be cultivated. They were just trying to act like they were authorities
They
when they
had to say
weren't.
something. They had to say
Yes.
something
Yep.
to say
Yep.
that he's lacking of something. He can't be
Yep.
perfect, you know?
Yep. So so even though they didn't understand, they began at the journey home, and the bystanders, amazed at him, gazed upon them in astonishment, and they were afraid he was going to get beat up. They were so full of rage. And then she wondered at them just allowing the Holy Family to depart peaceably. I think they were in shock. I think they were in shock when they were leaving. So the crowd is dense, and yet they opened the crowd, Jeanette, to like, oh, like they were all like gazing upon them in astonishment. And the
Yes.
scribes are back there in shock. They're like, what the heck just happened? So the Holy Family leaves, but even though they didn't understand, Mary was like, she was a little bit perturbed, but she then probably, he probably said, like you said, woman, and then she all of a sudden, like what you just said. So anyway, so they leave and they join the party of 3 men, 2 women, and some children. Those must be the people, and she says, I didn't know them, but they appeared to be from Nazareth. They went together to different places around Jerusalem. So they're wandering about, occasionally standing to pray. So they're back to their like, okay, we found him, everything's okay, we're fine now. And they end up praying with this little party. Um, and then Jesus had returned to Nazareth. And then she saw a feast at Anne's house, which they were all, so he went to grandma's house. So now after I do the rosary and I see him 12 years old, I know he's going to grandma's house after this for a
That's
dinner.
awesome.
Yeah, right.
I
And
love it.
yeah, and all the youths and maidens among their friends and relatives. She does not know whether it's a feast of rejoicing at Jesus having been found, or a feast solemnizing upon the return of the Paschal journey, or a feast customary in the completion of the son's 12th year. Oh, the 12th year, like my husband had to do with his
Like the quinceañera.
yeah, but no, that's Spanish.
Only, I know, but instead of 15, they might in this tradition do it at 12.
No, you know how they do. What is it my husband did at 12? He had to learn Hebrew for it. He told me all
I
about it.
don't
What's
know.
what's it called when the uh Jewish boys
But mitzvah?
But yeah, bar mitzvah and bat mitzvah, like that. It's kind of like that's what they put on it.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So maybe that's what this party is for, this
I
feast.
don't know.
So we can imagine then he did his bar mitzvah, and then the girls do bat mitzvah or whatever, right? Um, it's boys bar mitzvah. Yeah, bar mitzvah, and girls bat mitzvah. Yeah. It's a coming of age ritual in Judaism, according to
Okay.
Jewish law. Yeah. Okay, so that's maybe what they were doing, his bar mitzvah. So now when I do the rosary, I think, oh, they have to learn Hebrew. Like my husband told me he had to learn all this stuff. So here, Jesus, after on the rosary, when we do the 12th, the fifth mystery of the luminous mysteries, we right the luminous, the finding.
No,
Wait,
the
no,
finding in the
that's the
temple
joyful.
is the joyful.
Joyful.
Yes.
Yeah. So
The
here in
last
the
one in the joyful.
joyful, before we go to the luminous, because the joyful comes from Jesus being presented in the temple as a baby, where she knows about the seven stars.
And you got the Simeon. You remember what's happened to Simeon and all that good stuff too.
But it jumps 12 years to finding Jesus in the temple. And then after that, it goes to the luminous. So then it jumps to 33 years. So we jump 20 years. So it jumps 12 years, then 20. So in the rosary here, we can see this. So look, well, we're not done, Jeanette. Stop trying to rush me. We need to get everything. We need to wring it all out and get everything. Calm down. So calm down. So here they're at this beautiful feast, and it's beautiful bowers were erected over the table. These archways is what I'm imagining bowers are.
Yeah.
Where they hung garlands and vine. Jeanette, don't you just want to do this at Thanksgiving? Put these bowers over your table and then hang stuff from? I mean, you're already hanging vines in your from candle to candle, you were saying you were gonna do?
Yeah.
Or goblet to goblet, you were gonna hang vines. That's kind of like this.
Yeah.
So this is they're served with grapes and little rolls. My grandmother always had fake grapes, and I always, when I in my kitchen in Philadelphia, we had a house on Pratt Street. It's bad now, but on the ceiling I had my first husband put lattice, and I hung grape leaves and vines on the top, Jeanette, on my ceiling in my house. Now I know why I was doing the things I was doing. My sister-in-law's like, you're so weird, because I was so like into stuff like grapes and vessels. I bought a huge vessel and I had to carry it home, and then finally my sister-in-law's like, you're so weird. Why do you want that? That's so old-fashioned. I'm like, I love all that. Now I know why they were like the big ones that you see them turn water to wine. That's how, but it was huge, and I had to carry it home from a flea market we found it at.
Well, yeah, if you think about it, at the wedding of Cana, the things of wine were crazy huge, guys.
And the one that I found at the flea market had all little grapes on it. And then I had grapes in the ceiling. So I'm like, this will match my ceiling. This is what I had in my Philadelphia house. Like, I didn't know why I was collecting these things. And I had to get rid of everything when I moved to Florida, though. Oh, I'm so sad. I wish I still had that.
Well, you enjoy it. I'm sure someone else is enjoying them too.
I know, but I want to go back and get that. Anyway, so I have no room for a big thing like that here. But your house, we can talk to your house. Anyway, so here, I always saw my big kitchen, like I had him break open the wall and I had a big wooden thing, and I didn't even cook, but I just imagined this. And now I know where I was getting it from. So here we are, they had the grapes, and they had grapes with little rolls. Like, could you imagine cheese and grapes? And that's what I imagined. They were present for the feast's 33 boys. Make no mistake, there's a reason they chose 33 here. She saw 33 because the Jesus year he died was 33.
33.
All future disciples of Jesus. And she received instruction upon these years. I wonder what this instruction was. During the whole feast, Jesus instructed the other boys and explained to them very wonderful parable in which was only imperfectly understood. It was the marriage feast. The water could be turned to wine, the lukewarm guests into zealous friends, and again at a marriage feast where the flesh would abide in the guests till the end of the world. They're describing the Eucharist. She's describing the Eucharist.
Yeah, they're describing the wedding feast at the end of time.
And that's what we
And
use.
it started with the wedding at Cana, and it moved on to everything he did at that wedding to
the blood and bread into
Yes.
flesh. He tells them, he's telling them this is going to progress, and that the guests at the end of the world as strength and consolation. When we go to get your Eucharist, you're getting a consolation from God, guys. That's our consolation, is the Eucharist. Why would you not want to go do that every day? I can't wait. I'm going today. I was off a couple of days because I had a bad couple of days, and I'm going back today, back to my daily mass. I have missed it so much, my consolation. He said also to one of the youths, a relative of his own name, Nathaniel, Jeanette, that it's the wedding at Cana must be Nathaniel's. I shall be present at thy marriage. That is the person's name, the wedding at Cana. Now I'm going to remember that. When I do the luminous mysteries, the wedding at Cana on the 4th, is it the 4th, Jeanette? The wedding at Cana is the first. No. Wait, what's the first? The first is the baptism. It's BW. Yeah, it's the second. It's the second, because then is the
5th is the finding in the temple.
No, that's joyful. I'm talking about
what are you
luminous.
Talking about? The luminous.
It's the second, right? The luminous.
The 5th is the institution of the Eucharist.
No, so the second is.
The 3rd is the proclamation of the kingdom of God.
So the second.
The 4th is the transfiguration.
No, the second.
Yes, the second is Christ's self-manifestation at Cana.
Because I have the acronym BWP something E. P BWP something E. Anyway, so here from his 12th year, he was always like a teacher among his. That's why they went with him. He often sat among them, instructing them, or walked about the country with them. Boom. There you go. That's why they followed him. They knew how intelligent he was from a child. And guys,
even
tomorrow,
before his 12 years, we've been reading before his 12 years how he was always helpful
respected
to his mother, to Joseph, carrying his wood giant pieces, and and helping everybody that ever needed it.
But more than that stuff, he was instructing since he was small. They said, look, you want to be like Joseph's mother, Joseph's son? Right. Yeah, they were using him like you said. They're saying, why don't you be good like him helping his parents? You're right, Jeanette.
Yes.
So look, tomorrow, the death of Saint Joseph. Jeanette, this will go along with our Saint Joseph consecration.
Yes.
Jesus and Mary in Capernaum. Jeanette, oh, tomorrow's going to be exciting. We only have 2 more days till Jeanette has her surgery, so we'll be doing only 2 more days. I don't think she's going to be able to do Thursday and Friday, but we'll see.
Talk with a messed up nose. I'll just have a black screen.
Maybe guys, I'll do all the reading. Maybe
I can read.
Okay. Well,
the only thing I can't do is
can everybody please pray for my friend Jeanette for her surgery, because prayer, just say one Hail Mary for her, please. Whenever I see online when people say pray for this guy, he just had a heart attack like yesterday, I just hurry up and say Hail Mary for the guy that had a heart attack. I do what's her name, Daniel's prayers and novenas or whatever. Danielle. And so I'll forward one that she does. And every day I see her posting about someone. Even I sent something
Oh,
in.
that's good. Yeah.
Yeah, my son, I asked her to have a bunch of people, and like 200 people prayed for this girl.
That's good.
She came from a Baptist family, and she turned against God. Like, she's a Satanist, and now she's dying of cancer, stage 4
Oh,
lung
no.
cancer.
Oh,
Remember, I
no.
had lung cancer, but she has a very rare form. So, guys, um, uh, this lady, I will forward one. And so I had her pray. If you ever want prayer, a whole bunch of prayer for someone, send it to this lady. And I made this girl anonymous because she's just a customer of my son's that he told me about. So I sent it to her, and I said, I had 200 people praying for you. Now remember, I said, maybe God will save your life, because she has an autistic child. I said, maybe God will save your life for your children if you turn to him and give up the past. So I was trying to tell her, and guess what she said? Thank you so much for all those prayers. She appreciated it. Maybe God meant for her to hear that. And I had 200 people praying for her. I'm going to forward it in my Facebook, guys, because I'll put it below the name of her in case for people on Facebook.
Okay.
I'll give you guys a link. So guys,
And
we'll see you tomorrow.
And today's my son's birthday, so I don't know if I don't know if his wife or he's gonna be watching the video, but if you are, Jonah, happy birthday, Jonah.
Happy birthday to you. Let's sing, Jeanette. One time I want you to sing.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Jonah. Happy birthday to you. May God bless you.
And remember your prayer you always did, Jeanette, when you would do with your kids. And
Oh,
when you
yes,
would
when my kids
say
were
your
very
prayer
little.
for Jonah. Say your prayer for him.
Oh, here's a blessing, Jonah. If you remember, I used to do to you and all my other kids before school, whenever I left you somewhere, I'd always say, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord let his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord look upon you kindly and give you peace and love and happiness and protection out there. Amen.
That's what
And
you would
that's
say
number
to them.
6. That's the blessing number 6 that Moses gave to the people in the Old Testament.
I never remember to do that with my kids.
Number 6, 24, 26. Yeah.
And Jeanette did that since they were little. So happy birthday, Jonah. That's a beautiful blessing from Mama. All right, guys. We'll see you tomorrow.
Bye.
And we're don't make sure you tune in tomorrow, because it's the death of Saint Joseph.
It's gonna be good.
Bye.
Bye.